The Garden Gurus live show is brought to you by Garden Express and Yates.
Garden Express are Australia's leading mail ordering service, offering a wide range of quality gardening products. Each week on the Garden Gurus Live, the team at Garden Express will share a weekly offer. So make sure after today's show, you jump online and visit their website.
From indoor plant care to garden weed control products, Yates is the secret to a thriving garden. Later in the show, the team at Yates will share their top gardening tips and tricks for you to try this weekend. And for more advice to make your garden bloom, head to yates.com.au. I definitely don't. How's that? Can you hear me? No sound, no sound, no sound. Sorry, Maggie. Who else? Sorry, Jeanette. Sorry, Mary. How's that?
I can hear you now.
Have you got sound?
Yeah.
Sound good?
There
Sorry.
is sound now.
Where do we start? I don't know. I was going to tell you we've got so many questions this week that we're going to be very, very busy. You sent us so much. There must be a lot happening in your gardens. I'm here to help you with those things. That's, of course, the most important thing. But we won't do a weather wrap. We won't do a Garden Express gift voucher this week. We might ask Rowan if he can give us something else. I think he might have something up his sleeve. And we have got, I'm not joking, we have got a heap of questions. I don't think I've seen so many questions. Thanks, everybody. Yes, it's all good. Somebody said that the sound of silence was very good. Thanks, Peter Wiseman. I'm not sure, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Some people in my family might say it's good when he's quiet. Okay, so here we are, Garden Gurus Live. I'm Trevor Cochrane. We have got a great program for you. I was just going to say that on our Facebook page, if you've been checking it out, I've been posting a few photos of some highlights in my garden, one of them being hippeastrums. They are just magnificent at the moment, but they're about 3 weeks behind where they were this time last year. And the other one is right now in my garden, I've got this magnificent, beautiful, double flowering pink cherry tree, flowering cherry. It's just gorgeous. And it's only been in the garden, this is coming up year 3. Went in as a very small tree, year 2, reasonable. This year, it's not a big tree at all, but it's starting to really put on a show. So I posted some lovely photos of that tree. I hope you really enjoy it. We, of course, have got so many different things to tell you about, but I thought what we would do is we might help you with some of the things that you should be doing in your garden. There's no better person to do that with than Angie from Yates. Good morning to you, Angie.
Good morning. Good morning. I love seeing your cherry on Facebook. It's just beautiful. Is it a Kansan or something like that? That's really
it's one of the brand new varieties from the guys at Fleming's, and so every once in a while I go begging to the guys at Fleming's and say, hey, what's new, what's coming up, let me do some trials for you. And cherries, like, the significance of that particular tree is probably lost on a lot of people, but cherries are a very cold climate tree. They generally won't grow in a place like Perth, and if they're growing in the Perth Hills, they'll grow in the Adelaide Hills, and that can be very hot and dry as well, but of course cold during the winter. So we're a really good sort of area to test, and this tree is just smothered in beautiful blooms. And yeah, I was just thrilled. A very, very rare and unusual thing to see in Perth, in Western Australia. So couldn't help but have a little bit of a brag there. That's just how it goes.
It's not bragging, it's sharing. It's
It was,
okay.
yeah, sharing is caring, and if anything's going to inspire you to go and plant a cherry tree, I reckon it's when you see them at their best in their flower. They look great. You know what? I have been in my garden a lot in the last week or two, and I'm seeing all sorts of things happen. There's lots of growth going on, and when lots of growth goes on, you can start to see other things. Sometimes it's pests because that soft succulent growth is delicious, and sometimes it's shortage of nutrient, and you would never think that would happen in my garden because I am so focused on feeding the plants on a regular basis. But guess what? There are a few plants, and they're always those common indicators. So I've got a couple of dwarf citrus, and I've got a gardenia, and they're showing some signs of these deficiencies. And I'm looking at it saying, you know what? I know I fed them. There's something not right. So I did something that everybody should do. I went and checked my soil pH. And guess what?
That's right. Was it a little bit off?
It was a little bit off, and those nutrients, those greening nutrients, are not available.
Yeah, that's right. So we should all test our soil pH because the sweet spot for pH is just about neutral, slightly acidic, about 6.5, 7. And when
Yeah.
it strays from that sweet spot, that Goldilocks zone of pH, nutrients become locked up and become unavailable to plants. So as you've said, you can be feeding and feeding and feeding, and it just is not making the difference that it should. And it could be because your pH is either too alkaline, so pH above 7, or too acidic, so pH 6 and below. So
Yeah.
like we all should get a health check at our GP, we should be doing a soil test in our garden. Do it at different places around the garden because soil can vary. You don't know what's gone on in your particular block before you got there. There could be builders doing things, or there could be old gardens, or whatever has gone on. So different spots, and test that pH.
So yeah, so in this particular instance, the trees that are in question and the gardenia are all in raised garden beds that are established garden beds. But I suspect that with the citrus, that the limestone blocks have released limestone into it because the soil's alkaline. And when the soil's alkaline, that's when your iron gets locked up. Your access to nitrogen is not as good as it should be. Manganese and magnesium, all those greeners are suddenly not available, and that's why I'm seeing this. So my goal is to adjust the pH. Have you got any tips on how people could best do that?
Yeah, so depending on whether it's alkaline soil and you're starting to get that iron-induced or iron chlorosis, so that's one of the easiest deficiencies to actually spot. So if your leaves are pale but the veins are still green, so it's called interveinal chlorosis. It's a fancy word for pale leaves and dark green veins,
Yep.
and that means you've got an iron deficiency, and that often happens when the soil is too alkaline. So test the pH. If it's too acidic, you can use lime to bring the pH up, or if it's too alkaline, you can use sulfur to bring it down. So whichever pH that you've got. So have a look in the Yates new soil improver range. They're granules, so they're much easier to use than the powdered traditional lime and dolomite or sulfur. So if your soil is too acidic, you can increase the pH with the Yates lime and dolomite, or decrease it with sulfur. So whichever, wherever you lie on the pH spectrum, we can help by bringing that pH back closer to neutral. Also, if you've got acid-loving plants in your garden, like camellias and azaleas and rhododendrons and blueberries, you can use the sulfur as well to help lower the pH, and they'll be much happier in that more acidic pH as well.
Yeah, it's really good advice. The last week or so, I've had a question from somebody in the northern beaches of Sydney and also out on the Mornington Peninsula, both of them saying, you talk about the importance of calcium in the soil, and I limed my garden, but I've had this problem with the chlorosis of the leaves, and I've taken one look and I said, check your pH. They've come back and said, oh yeah, 7.5. I'm like, right, you're just too alkaline, right? So it's this thing of sort of saying, okay, yeah, but you do need to be putting calcium into your soil, particularly so this is on, in both instances, on vegetables. So tomatoes were the big indicator, but also capsicums in the other case. And the suggestion is in those environments, what you want is you want a calcium source that's pH neutral. And you guys have that, don't you?
Yeah, so it's a really good question, particularly as tomato growing season and tomatoes and other fruiting vegetables like capsicum and also zucchinis can be prone to a condition called blossom end rot, and
Yep.
that happens because the plant doesn't have enough access to calcium, often contributed to with inconsistent moisture. So applying some lime and dolomite granules helps to fortify the soil with additional calcium. The plants can draw on that. You'll get tomatoes, and you'll really reduce the chances of blossom end rot. So test your pH, and if you're growing tomatoes and other fruiting veggies, add some calcium into the soil with the Yates lime and dolomite granules, and you'll get a bumper harvest.
Hey, Angie, I don't know if you've been looking at our Facebook page, but did you see the picture of our indoor living wall at the moment?
It's gorgeous.
It's
Oh my,
spectacular, isn't it? It's
yeah,
just
yeah.
crazy. And that's the second year for the Phalaenopsis orchids. So first year they went in and they had flowers on them, then they finished their flowering, they've sat dormant. Well, not dormant, but they've sat there green for a period of time. And then about 4 or 5 months ago, you could see the new shoots starting to come through. And what triggers the flowering process with Phalaenopsis is cooler conditions around sort of 12 to 14 degrees for about a 3 or 4 week period. So these are right on the edge of glass windows, and of course we had winter, so we had bright light and cooler conditions. And the flower show at the moment is so spectacular that people are walking up and either getting their photo at the window with them, or alternatively, and here we go, speaking of Phalaenopsis, how beautiful are they?
Here's one I prepared earlier, Trevor.
Yeah, I love it. I just love it. And they're just so good. But these guys are so prolific at the moment with the flower that people keep standing there going, they're not real, are they? And it just shows, and particularly in a living wall, it's one plant that I haven't seen landscapers use a lot of. But of course, we've gone and used them in this as an instance, and it's just spectacular. And I think that with a lot of indoor plants, we talked about soils getting tired and compounding. We've just gone through a lot of the indoor plants we use in our offices and just knocked the old potting mix off and planted them into some fresh potting mix. A little bit of a root trim, very, very little bit, and a little bit of a foliage trim just to keep them bushier. And within like 2 to 3 weeks, the change in the plants is amazing. And I think it's something you should be doing this time of the year, right?
That's right, because the weather is warm, and just because we grow plants indoors doesn't mean they don't know it's spring and we've got more sunlight coming into our homes and it's warmer, so they want to grow. But we often forget that our indoor plants need a little bit of a refresh. They use up the nutrients in potting mix quite quickly. They've got nowhere else to go for a snack, so it's up to us to make sure that we refresh potting mix. And so if it's become pot bound or it's been in the same pot for a while, just as you said, you don't necessarily need to go up to the next size pot. Remove it from the old pot, knock a few of those old roots off around the outside, and then pot it in some fresh potting mix. And the quality of the potting mix that you use is really, really important. You really do get what you pay for when it comes to potting mix. So in the Yates specialty potting mix range, we've got a couple of different potting mixes that are great for indoor plants, like cacti and succulents, so great for your mother-in-law's tongue and your Zanzibar gems. We've also got orchid mix, which is a real chunky mix, which is great for moth orchids, Phalaenopsis orchids. But we've got the general plants and ferns as well, which is great for your leafy peace lilies and your fiddle leaf figs and your monsteras. It will feed your plants for up to 6 months. It's got controlled release fertilizer in there and an extra biostimulant in there as well to really promote root and plant health. But particularly if the weather is warm, if you don't feel like going outside, use that opportunity to repot your indoor plants. And as you said, they will thank you for doing that by putting on extra growth over the coming weeks.
Yeah, well, certainly one of the things that I have been quite amazed with has been by changing the soil up, just in a very short period of time, the foliage plants, the amount of new growth that's come on them. And so I'm really conscious that there's going to be a period of time, they're obviously taking all that energy out of the soil and putting it into this beautiful new foliage. But I want that growth to be sustained. What would you recommend to help keep the momentum going in a couple of weeks, maybe 3 to 4 weeks' time?
So regular feeding of indoor plants, they're so lush, they can be potentially so lush and leafy, and we have to support that, just as if we would support the growth of anything that we've got out in our gardens, or we're growing edible plants. If you feed it, they will come. So if you
Yeah,
feed your indoor plants, we've got lots of different options for feeding plants, indoor plants. There's Thrive spikes, which are so easy to use. They concentrated spikes of nutrients. You just push one into the potting mix and it will feed for 2 months. But there's liquid fertilizers as well in the Thrive range. There's even drippers. So there should be no excuse for not feeding your in plants. It's
yeah.
so easy and can feed for up to 2 months. So
And
we can't
and
make it any easier for people to feed.
I was going to say, I'm just watching questions flow through. Just going back to, we mentioned tomatoes. I mean, it's the topic of this is really at the moment the month to be planting your tomatoes. And towards the end of this month, after that, you probably don't worry unless you want to get yourself a late autumn crop. But Michael Hurst has sort of said, look, growing tomatoes, apart from the sun, is there any other way or fertilizer for ripening them faster? And this is where you get into your specialist fertilizers and why they're so important, because the balance of nutrients will assist with regards to that push. And if you just reach into the shed and you grab any old general fertilizer and throw it down, you're probably going to find that the plant will grow because it'll have lots of nitrogen in there and it'll encourage that growth, but not necessarily support the fruit, right? And that's a very important thing you need to do.
That's right. Choose a fertilizer which is rich in potassium. So potassium is the nutrient that promotes flowering, fruiting. Something like Yates Thrive Flowering Fruit is ideal. 2 scoops in a watering can and off you go. Because as you said, if you feed it with a high nitrogen fertilizer, you're going to lose your flowers and fruit at the expense of green leafy growth. And lush tomatoes are fantastic, but I actually want the fruit and the flowers on there.
Yeah.
So feeding with the right fertilizer is really important.
We've got lots of people joining us. Faye Caro's an old friend. Kieran Edwards,
Hi,
Annie
Faye.
Z, Mark Tuchek, Nancy Skade. There's a whole bunch of
Hi,
people
Mark.
who are tuned in, and they're all commenting, and it's great to have their support and their interest. I was going to ask you the one other thing. I reckon question of the week off our social media pages at the moment has to be about weed control. Everybody is at that stage where they're watching them going to flower, and we know within a couple of weeks they're going to go to seed. And once we've got 1 year's lots of seed, what do we end up with?
7 years weed at least.
7 years weeds.
At least.
That's right.
I find the weeds in my garden, it's sort of like playing a game of what's the time, Mr. Wolf? Like you turn around and then they grow behind you and you turn back around and they've grown again. It's like, what is going on? So get on top of your weeds, people, because if they flower and set seed, it's not only for next year, it's years in advance. And also weeds, they spoil the look of your garden. I was doing some weeding this morning and looking at the weeds, and some of them are infested with rust. So weeds can be a conduit for pests and diseases, and they spread to your wanted plants, and they're not great. So, and they steal water and nutrients. So get rid of your weeds. So one of the easiest non-back-breaking ways to control weeds is with something like Yates Zero Triple Strike. What I'm finding, if the soil is dry, and if I try to hand weed, I often leave that big taproot of the big sow thistle or whatever I've got in my garden, and it will just regrow. But if I spray it with something like Zero Triple Strike, it moves from the foliage down into the roots and kills the weed, roots and all. So it will control broadleaf weeds and grass weeds, and really helps my gardening life be a lot easier, because I know that weed is going to be dead and I want it dead. And I want my garden to be looking lovely, and weeds just isn't part of that plan.
Yeah, look, I think the other thing that a lot of people don't take into account, and I'm really conscious of it in my garden at the moment, is that there's a few of the weeds that are quite common weeds that have popped up, and when I look at them, I can also see that they're a major host for some pests. So I've suddenly noticed, I get a lot of Cape gooseberries that just pop up randomly around the garden. They're the greatest indicator of red spider mite plagues and outbreaks. Absolutely amazing how the spider mite goes to them first. So when sometimes I'll leave 1 or 2 of those plants, and I use them as indicator plants to know what sort of pests might come in. Just at the moment, we have got, milk thistle is everywhere, and it's a case of get in and get it out as quickly as you possibly can. But of course, it's also a great indicator of things like snails and slugs and caterpillars, because they do love that as well. So I'm sort of leaving little patches then going through a few weeks later before the seed sets and falls, and I just take them and I go and feed them to my chooks, and my chooks give me eggs back at the same time. But at the whole time, I'm able to look at the garden. And I think the key message here is look at your plants. They will tell you, and there are some plants that tell you better than others, whether there's a shortage of nutrient in the soil or whether there's a particular prevalence of a type of pest. And so I'm always watching and looking. And sometimes the easiest way to do that is just to stand out there with a hose, the end of the day, maybe a cold drink in your hand, and just look. And it's amazing how they talk to you.
Yeah, that's right. And when it comes to pests, it's much easier to get a few aphids under control than wait till they've brought their extended family around for a party. So they'll do much less damage if you've only got a few, and then you can control them. So yeah, be mindful, and it gives you an opportunity to walk around the garden with a cup of tea or a glass of shardy or whatever you enjoy, and just enjoy your garden and have your eagle eyes open at the same time.
Now, Angie, I think I alluded to, I've got so many questions coming through, but there was a couple of questions here that I just wanted to run past you. What is a good organic blue copper, it's got to be, for fungicide?
From an organic perspective, so Yates has got a liquid copper, which is really good broad spectrum fungicide. It will control the mildews and the rust and a lot of leaf spots. It's not certified organic, but on the scale of things that you can use, copper-based sprays have been around forever, and so that would be what I would recommend. Alternatively, depending on the diseases, there's eco-fungicide in the organic crop protectants range that is certified for use in organic gardening. So either Yates liquid copper or eco-fungicide. I would look at both of those to see that if that controls the particular disease you have. Yeah.
The liquid copper I've used extensively at my place, and it's a really effective treatment of a broad spectrum. I've kind of noticed that it seems to have a natural control for slugs and snails in the veggie patch as well. So they're very intolerant to copper as a general comment. So it's probably just a bit of a natural control. And to your point about organic, it's a mineral, so we just need to understand that this is a naturally occurring mineral. It just happens to be that it's in a dense form, and that gives us greater control over those diseases that can't handle higher concentrates. Angie, we need to keep rolling on. There are so many questions coming through. I'm never going to get through them all, but hey, it's great catching up with you. I'm looking forward to seeing you tomorrow on the Garden Gurus at 4:30.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Enjoy the rest of the show, and happy gardening, everyone.
Yeah, you too. You have a lovely weekend. Well, I'll fly through these questions because it is happening. Christine Rankin, I tell you what, she can't help herself. She's in Hawaii. She's doing all the tourist stuff at Waikiki. But she tuned in with us, which is great, Christine. Lovely to have you with us. Ginny Napier is a great friend. Did you get any fruit on that cherry tree last year? So the cherry that I refer to is a flowering cherry. So it does produce little tiny fruit, but they're not edible fruit. But I do have cherries in the garden, and the two that work really well for me in the environment that I live in are a variety called Van, and the most successful is a variety called Bean. And you've got to have them both together anyway for it to work. So Jeannie, if you want fruiting, Van and Bean, absolutely fantastic. Jeff and Rita Mapstone, they're in Delaney's Creek in Queensland. They're great. When is the best time to repot the desert rose? And I reckon about now, actually. I've always seen the growers of the desert rose. They will often sort of repot sort of as the weather gets warmer. They don't like... what they don't like is they don't like wet feet and they don't like cold conditions. So that's why it's so important. I'm trying to get through a few of the questions that have been sent through. I know Jeff and Rudy, you join us on a weekly basis, but of course, anybody can watch this afterwards. And please remember, share this with your friends. Those people who are giving us the likes, when you give us those likes, the great thing about that is it gets shared with your friends and our community gets bigger and better, which is what it's all about. Kerry Rogers, hello. I was given a rectangular container of haresfoot fern and it's starting to break down. I tried to lift the plant, but the feet break off. My questions are, can I replant the feet to grow new plants? Now, you can. Those feet, those hairy little feet on the haresfoot fern are rhizomes, and they have the ability to drop roots and send up shoots and continue to grow. So if they break off, don't worry, put them into some fresh soil. Tends to be a soil that likes, that's a high level of peat in it. and you'll find that they'll do really well. They like that regular moisture. Remember, when you're writing into us, tell us where you're from as well. Really important. Mary War is from High Wycombe. That's over here in Western Australia. She sent some photos through. I have a problem with my limonium. It's a, that is your, it'll come to me. I've got a blockage on the name, sorry. It'll come to me. It's a really interesting problem that you've sent the photo through. So when we're having a look at this, it says, you're saying it's not flowering, but in actual fact, I can see the flower buds have come through, but what you've got is a big attack of this thrip that does a lot of damage to flowering plants as a general comment, particularly roses, but it loves, for some strange reason, it really does love these guys. They really are an interesting plant with regards to thrips. And you can see the flowers are there. You can see the purple flowers to the left of the photo, but the rest of them, I think the buds have basically been damaged to the point where the flowers are not opening. And this is not an uncommon problem. So getting rid of it, well, you need to use a thrip spray, and there's a whole bunch. It's going to keep us all fairly challenged if you don't control it. So the Yates Advance will do the job. You can be using things like your horticultural soaps or oils. They do have some effect, but to be quite honest, systemic insecticides are the ones that do the best treatment. It's one from Rich Grow called Bug Killer. And it's a granular, so you put it over the soil, and that will take care of that. But what you do need to do with these plants, which by the way, I forgot the name before, but they're called status. And what you do with these plants, status, is take the finished flowers off, and it'll encourage new flowers to come through. Hopefully that helps. All right, let's keep rolling along and answering questions. And Annie, who's a good friend of ours, I'm with the vinegar and all things natural, but I'm about to resort to carbaryl. Is there a safe wide spray that may land over my edibles and tea herbs or not? So I don't really have time for sifting through individual plants. Okay, well, vinegar, you definitely don't want to be putting vinegar on any of your plants, because vinegar will dehydrate them rapidly, and the acid in it will burn off the foliage. So vinegar is a great natural solution for weeds, particularly in pavers and things like that. When it comes to carbaryl is a very intensive insecticide, and it'll kill a broad range of insects. But there's some pretty soft, safe versions of that now to get control. And I think probably the one I'm going to suggest is probably Yates Advanced. I think is a solution, pretty good. The other one, Success, it kind of depends on whether you've got chewing and sucking insects, but probably Success and Advance are probably the two I would have, Annie, in the shed all the time. Billy Lyons is from Hawkesbury in New South Wales. Firstly, like some idea on why this large camellia is slowly dying branch by branch. It's not a good look. And if you're in the West, I'd be telling you, watch out. There's a new pest over here that's causing problems, but it could be the same thing. So the pest over here is Polyphagus shothole borer. But shothole borers are an interesting beetle. They carry a fungus with them. They drill a hole into the stem. The fungus gets inside it, and it basically turns the cambium layer, the conductive tissue through the plant, to mush, stops it from moving, and the top above that point where there's an attack will die off. In this particular case, there's a couple of native versions. They tend to be more sort of northern New South Wales and Queensland, but again, it's a kind of collar rot disease that you really do probably need to take a look at. Best thing to do is go through, prune those old branches off. Don't be scared to prune it back. That's a big mature tree. It will bounce back, but take all the old branches off. And then if it continues, we might need to have a think about maybe a systemic fungicide, possibly even insecticide. Billy, hopefully that helps. You did actually throw a second one through, and it's about camellias. I keep coming back. Oh, I think these got little black spots. Those little black spots do look a little concerning to me, but I'm suspecting that that's not a pest unless it is scale, and I can't quite see it well enough to tell you if it is a scale. It looks to me like it is more mechanical than it is anything. And I would be suggesting that the real solution to this is actually feeding. It could be scale, but I'd suggest that at the moment, you can see you've got buds sitting there. They need to be pushed through. I would be giving it a good feed with a good all-round as camellia and azalea fertilizer. So it's designed to acidify the soil a little bit, and that'll get that plant going, because it could be scale damage, but it looks more mechanical to me, which means that it's probably more movement or scarring kind of damage than anything else. And it suggests the plant's just not as healthy as it should be. Hopefully that helps. Mark Bombarderi, hello, you're in Queensland, North Queensland, Cairns. Talking of pests, any suggestions to deter bandicoots digging up our gardens? You know what, Mark, don't forget also, send us through your information so we can give you your prize from last week. Remember, you won the best question last week. Bandicoots are a bit of a problem sometimes in gardens, but as a general comment, they're eating pests in the soil, so you don't necessarily want to get them away. If they're doing a lot of damage in a set area, one of the things that I know is really effective is a combination of either lemon or lime juice, literally raw over the top of the soil. They won't tend to dig in that. And the second thing is pepper. They don't like that. They've got a very sensitive nose, and they'll move away. Not black pepper, but white pepper. So hopefully that helps, Mark. Jeanette Fenton, hello, Jeanette. Yes, that beard has gone, by the way. You're in Glenorchy in Victoria. Building an area in a small paddock where most food scraps and weeds are thrown, along with horse poo, and the chooks feast from it. Should we be throwing onion and lemon scraps into? You know what? I know a lot of people saying no onions. They say no onions because some animals do not respond very well to onions. For example, dogs, really bad for them to ingest onions. Lemon will break down, and it's not really a problem. As long as it's chooks, I don't think you've got too many problems in there. I don't think lemon or onion affects chooks negatively. I think it's a positive effect. So look, you can go in, if you are worried about the onions, put them in a little separate composting heap. Somebody was talking to me the other day about native leaves and sort of saying, oh, native leaves, eucalypt trees and melaleucas, they're awful because they don't break down. Well, they do break down, but they're very oil rich, so they tend to be preserved a lot longer. And so taking them, putting them into a contained place, putting some chicken manure in with them, superheat it up, get it real hot, they'll break down and make a wonderful compost. So there's a lot of these sorts of little stories we have that may be a little bit true, but not sometimes. Sue McCaughey, I hope I got it right. I've got a couple of Alpinia in my garden on the Sunshine Coast. Why do some stalks flop down? Is it because the garden bed is too wet? It probably is. One thing with Alpinias that's really interesting with them is that they can get very, very floppy if you are not feeding them with the right thing. And what I mean by that is you don't want to give them a high nutrient level of nitrogen. You actually want higher phosphorus in the soil for that particular type of plant. You'll find that it's a little bit more compact. The stems are a lot stronger and a lot less likely to flop over if they are getting too much moisture or weight on them, which can happen. Hopefully that helps. Chrissy Marie's in Tasmania. We've gone from Queensland to Tasmania to Victoria. Chrissy Marie, hello. I'm designing a new landscape for my backyard. Can I grow Japanese maple tree in a large pot? I know there's different varieties. Is there a dwarf one that would survive in a pot? Jump online to Fleming's website. Fleming's have some beautiful dwarf maple trees, absolutely gorgeous. I've got a whole bunch of them growing in my garden in Perth. They're not meant to really do that well here, but they do extremely well. And they will love Tassie. They'll love your environment. And yes, if it's a large pot, they will grow in that quite well. So the answer is absolutely yes. Flemings.com.au. I'm pretty sure it's Flemings, or it could be flemingsnursery.com.au. Might ask one of the team here to do a quick check for me on that website, but I'm pretty sure it's right. We'll pop that up there. And it is flemings.com.au. So there you go. All right. Now, let's keep rolling on. Vinette Ainsberg. Hello, Vinette. Let's have a look here. My small fruit tree is in a pot, but it's not fruiting. Is there anything I can do to help it along, prune or fertilizer? And it depends on what. Oh, it's a fig. Sorry. It's a fig fruit tree. It should be. to be quite honest, figs do pretty well in pots. They love contained areas. And if the roots are contained, they tend to produce lots of fruit. Not always the biggest fruit, but they'll always produce fruit. So is there anything you can do? Definitely feed it on a regular basis. You can prune it to get it more compact, but you don't want to go pruning it at the wrong time of the year. And really, the right time of the year is after they would normally have fruited. Do it then, pushes out new growth, and it'll produce new fruit from that new growth. Hopefully that helps Vinette. Wendy Hayward's in Mandurah, staying in Perth now. Where can I buy Treforte M in Mandurah? Now, that's a good question, Wendy. I'm not sure in Mandurah of independent garden centres, but independent garden centres, I think Mitre 10s maybe. It's just not available in Bunnings stores. Now, in saying that to you, it is used in one of the Treforte products that you can find in Bunnings. So, yeah, Wendy, have a look. Either independent garden centre or alternatively, and if they don't have it, ask them to get it in for you. Treforte is a West Australian company, or Sunpalm, the company behind it, is a West Australian company, so they can supply anybody anywhere. And if all else fails, jump on their website and hit the little click on "Can I help you" link and email them, and they'll help out, I'm sure. Let's go to the Sunshine Coast, back to Queensland. We are all over the country today, aren't we? Hey, it's amazing. And our audiences are booming. So keep hitting the like button. It's great. Your friends are joining us, which is fantastic. Let's have a look here. Darren King in the Sunshine Coast. Just a quick question. Want to know if it's the lima beans that grow all year round. Lima beans can, I think, in the Sunshine Coast grow all year round. He has them with an ice cold Chianti. Of course you do. Way to go. I love it. So the answer is I think they will. I've never really grown lima beans. So maybe one of you guys have got a bit of experience in that and you'd like to share it with us. I'd love to hear. That would be fantastic. Remember, we're a community. And this little ecosystem is all about sharing ideas. I have a lot. Obviously, my whole career has been built around growing plants. So I certainly do know a lot, but I don't know it all, that's for sure. Jeanette says, thanks for the advice. She hopes the beard comes back. Love you, Jeanette. Thank you. It might do. We'll wait and see. Jenny Pennington is in Melbourne in Victoria. Hello. Why are my indoor plants going, the leaves are going brown around the outside edges? Now, interestingly enough, I wonder what sort of indoor plants you've got, because some indoor plants are very sensitive to salty fertilizers. And I should mention that a lot of the nutrients are available in a sulfate or salt form, sodium form. And this can cause, when it builds up, can cause this burning around the outside edge of leaves, particularly with plants like anthuriums. And the best thing you can do is take the plant out of the soil, knock all the soil off the root system, and replant it into some fresh indoor plant potting mix, and it'll make the world of difference to the plant's recovery. It'll still take it a while. You'll still see a little bit of burning for a while after, but yeah, just look at the fertilizer you're using. Maybe look to go to a controlled release fertilizer. So those little prills that release slowly into the soil. Okay, John May, I'm not sure where you are, John, but your question I can answer, I'm sure. Is it too late to cut back dwarf lily pillies? Yours is 3 meters tall. Doesn't sound like too much of a dwarf, does it? It's getting to a decent size. Cut them back. You can cut them back all through the year, and now's not a bad time to do it before the heat really kicks in. Denise Burns, suggestions for a shared townhouse front garden on the Gold Coast. Lots of sun. Denise, I don't know. It's a really good question. Probably the very first thing I would say to you is you should go to your local garden centre and show them a couple of pictures, because they'll give you a whole bunch of ideas that are suitable for your area. But I mean, you could do anything from a herb garden at the front to, native plants to, exotic tropicals. You could have bromeliads growing in there. There's so many different options for you because your climate is so good. Jess Robinson, Christine's messing with my mind. She says the beard makes me look younger. Colleen says it makes you look older. And I'm confused, guys. What do you think? With or without? Maybe I need to go back to growing it. Jess Robinson, hello. What's the best way to deal with possums eating citrus trees? Big problem. Is it really possums or is it rats? Because citrus fruit is often attacked by rats. And what they'll do is they'll eat the inside of the fruit out, usually from the bottom, believe it or not. It could be. If it's possums, white pepper. And the trick is you wet down the tree and you dust the white pepper over the top. and their noses are super sensitive, and they get on there and they basically sneeze and sneeze and sneeze and go, this is too hard, I'm going away. That's one way to control it. If it's rats, totally different kettle of fish, and you'll need a proper rat bait trap control system in place to get in control of them. Indrajith Pradeep, hello Indrajith, thank you for joining us. I have weeds in my backyard lawn, and since I've got 2 dogs, I've not been using any weed killer. Now I'm removing all manually, but that leaves small holes everywhere. It will do. What should I do to get the grass to grow without dying? Well, look, actually at the moment, something like Lawn Builder is a great lawn fertilizer to use to get to spread over any of the patches in your lawn. And you should be applying now because a lot of the winter weeds are also dying off as well. And you just want that lawn to be lush and healthy and green. Now there's some hose-on versions of these fertilizers these days that can get instant effect. Within 2 weeks, you will see that grass growing. And if you continue to use it every 2 weeks, you'll see within maybe 2 months, the lawn will just be thick and lush and really healthy. And it's a bit of a cheat, but it's what the professionals use more often than not on playing surfaces. And when you've got 2 dogs, it's equivalent to having a sporting ground. Basically, they can really cause a fair bit of wear and tear, and those holes can get bigger. So, yeah, my hose-on weed and feed recommendation is probably the way I'd go on this particular instance. Jeanette Fenton, hello, good morning to everyone. Watching a video about your garden lighting. You have such a beautiful property, and what amazing looking entrance driveway. I can only imagine the thought, time and costs involved. It is very beautiful. Thanks, Jeanette. It's a beautiful property. And when we went there, it wasn't exactly the way it is today. It was had, I think, 38 of the 42 declared weeds in Western Australia on the property. Very overgrown, no irrigation system, fairly poor quality soils, and a lot of trees in the wrong spot. And I think we ended up taking 38 trees out and putting in 120. It's the block itself's about, it must be 2 acres in the old terms, old language. And the interesting thing about the block and the reason why we've got to this point is 15 years down the line, all the trees have grown, and I wanted to use the garden more at night. And hence I've been looking at all of these opportunities when it comes to how do I sort of enhance it? How do I make it safer to traverse? And of course, a simple way to do that was to bring in garden lighting. But I've also had some of the issues, I suppose, that are going around with regards to lights that are cheaper systems that get moisture into them. They only live a couple of years. Those solar lights, I tried a few of those. And in the end, I found this professional lighting system that can be installed by yourself. And I'm absolutely in love with it. The garden is magnificent. So it's called Luminaire FX, and it's from the people who are behind Hunter. All controlled off an app off your phone. Different lights. Every single light is separately programmed. So different colors available, different intensities. And it's amazing about that lightscaping process and what a big difference it can make to everything you do. So thanks for your nice comments about that. It is a beautiful garden. I love my garden. I love spending time in it, and it's one of those great pleasures in life, and I do love sharing it as well. Okay, now we've got another photo come through. This is a pretty good one. Shelley Pasquill from Croydon, Victoria. You look like you've got Perth soils. It looks sandy. Now, it looks a very, very sandy soil. Yellow nuts. Oh, you've got nutgrass. Yep, okay. Keeps coming through. How can I get rid of it? Now, the only way you can get rid of it is using a systemic insecticide. Really, it's the best thing to do. And you want to spray it before you put anything in there. You mentioned that you've mentioned you've got rose bushes, and the last thing you ever want to do is introduce Roundup with roses. So glyphosate is roses are incredibly sensitive to it, and you cannot allow a tiny little speck to come in contact with your rose bushes, otherwise they will deteriorate and die. So in this particular instance, I would be recommending you look at suffocating this out by putting layers of cardboard or paper over the top of where the nut grass is coming through, and then mulch on top of that. And that stops, they won't push through the paper. The paper will break down, but by the time they've done that, you've literally suffocated the nutgrass out. Pulling nutgrass is definitely not an option. And as I said, systemics are normally the only way you can go, but don't use glyphosate near roses. Whew. Hopefully that helps. Garden Express is our one-stop garden shop. Every week we do all sorts of cool things. I showed you, if you're looking at our Facebook page, I showed you my magnificent hippie astrums, and it's a total tease because you can't get your hands on them. Can you, Rowan? Hey, mate.
On for the season, unfortunately, but yours are starting to look really nice.
They look fantastic. I was so thrilled with them. I went for a walk through yesterday, and it's really interesting to see the size of the blooms. You know, they're just such a standout. And once they're in, they're remarkably hardy. There's no ripping them out and, you know, having to chill them or dry them, or they're quite happy to stay in the soil in my garden year in, year out and just keep performing.
And they'll multiply, which is even a better result. So you'll get more as as time goes on, which is fantastic.
Yeah. Look, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've had a few things at the moment. Now, Rowan, look, everybody's devastated. They were all going to give us their best question. They've been saving up, wanting to have a great question. But bad news, no gift vouchers this week. What can we do?
Totally won't run out of gift vouchers, unfortunately.
What are we going to do?
Well, I thought, being that there's a big anniversary of the Woolamai Pine happening at the moment, I thought we would give away some Woolamai Pine.
What?
So I'm thinking maybe top 3 questions for the day.
Top 3 questions?
Yeah, so we'll get a Woolamai Pine. But not only a Woolamai Pine, I will also throw in the Woolamai Pine book, which explains all about this discovery. It's a really good read if you're interested in Woolamai Pine.
Wow.
It's a fantastic read. But wait.
Wow.
But wait.
Wait.
One more thing.
Oh
my God.
I love it.
Have a look at that.
I love
So
it.
anybody that's a regular here will have seen some footage that you guys shared, much to my disappointment, about me in a dinosaur suit promoting Woolamai Pine. Well, we're going to throw in one of these little 30th anniversary Woolamai Pine plushies as well. So the top 3 questions, Woolamai Pine, book and plushie this week.
Mate, they're lining up. Maggie has said, me please. Jeannie, me. Fantastic.
Yeah,
Everybody
I'm sure it's going
wants
to be
a Woolamai
popular,
Pine.
which is why we can't stop at 1. We'll give away 3.
Wow, that is awesome, mate. Well, listen, just talking about the Woolamai Pine and we did that amazing story out there in the nursery, and I got to spend some time with David. But let's just take everybody back a moment and just have a good look at it, because it is such a magnificent plant, and it's a very this is a really ancient plant. I'm just watching quickly. I just realised what's going on. Holly and Nick are quickly writing lots of questions, and I'm not answering their questions. Such a good prize. But let's maybe have a look at the clip first, and then we'll have a talk about this history. It's such an incredible plant. Let's have a look.
Sounds great.
I am just fascinated by these trees, and it was such a tragedy that we nearly lost them, but we all have a chance to bring them back to the planet. 250 million years ago, they were found right across the planet. Bit by bit, their demise occurred. Now, we don't know why, but we do know we can bring them back. Garden Express are your only source of getting your hands on these trees, and their crop each year is limited. I've asked David to help Garden Guru viewers who don't have a tree to get their own Woolamai Pine. He's put together this amazing deal. A beautiful 150mm tree ready to plant out, along with the book that tells the amazing story behind these trees and their discovery, along with Wooly, the dino plushie. There's over $150 in value, but Dave and the team at Garden Express are going to give you everything for just $99.
This is what we're talking about.
All right.
Beautiful.
Oh,
One for you.
nice. And this is how they come.
Exactly, yep. Boxed up, ready to go. Book and plush toy.
And it's all $99.
$99, correct. You've nailed it.
That's a super special deal, isn't it?
It is. It really is. It's a magnificent tree, and well worth getting one just in time for Christmas too, which is perfect.
Now that $99 deal is actually a super special deal because I know that they're normally around that $150 for the three, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Book's worth about $25, plushie about $29. So you're getting close to $50, but a bit over $50 for free basically, which is fantastic.
Well, at $99 to get all three of them is an incredible deal. And for the best questions today, 3 best questions, that is even more remarkable. The interesting thing about the Wollomai, and some of that footage, you would have seen it. You just don't appreciate how beautiful they are until you're into a huge shade house that's just full of them. Yeah. And there's a few people have been asking the questions about this particular plant because it has male and female sexual organs. And one of the things that people seem to really love on this show is when we talk about sex. I've noticed that recently. Yeah. Particularly Nika and Holly. There's lots of giggles always come from the other side of the computer. But one of the things.
So the round ones that you saw in the vision were the female cones, and the male cones are a long cone.
And typically they're located in different places on the tree, right? And this is strategic.
Yeah, so the male cones are the ones that mature first. So a lot of people that have a more mature Wollomai will notice that their male cones will come first, and then the females are always on the top of the tree. So you would have seen that in the vision. So the female is the seed pod, the male is the pollinator, and male is always underneath the female, which is the top of the tree.
That's a bit like the way they structure toilets. I never realised there was actually a code with regards to that. The male's always on the left-hand side of the building, and the female's always on the right-hand side because females are always right. Isn't that how it works?
That makes sense. That makes complete sense.
Oh, I'm in so much trouble. I can see people madly typing as we speak. So the thing with the Wollomai is that it's one of those plants that it does have to go in the right position. And there's a couple of people, Christine Rankin, for example, asking what is the right position for a Wollomai pine in Perth. And in my experience, they do better if they've got a little bit of protection. So almost treated like an under canopy tree, just off to one side, and a little bit of direct sun in the morning, perfect, and moisture in the soil. So you don't want them waterlogged, but at the same time, they can't dry out, right? So it's got to be that happy medium.
Yeah, definitely don't like wet feet. So you definitely want a free draining soil, but keep them moist. Like you said, a bit of dappled shade is really good, bit of morning sun. I did see a question there about growing them in a pot. You can absolutely do that. Bonsai, you can almost bonsai, and in fact, we have bonsaied Wollomai in the past. So they will naturally bonsai themselves to a pot. You see the one that I had here before, that's a 150ml pot. It's probably been in that pot for close to 4 years, and it will quite happily stay in that pot, but won't grow to the size. I mean, these things can grow up to 40 meters in the wild. Interesting to note that there's only about 100 known adult trees in the wild. It was found in just near Sydney in the Blue Mountains, and only 100 known trees that are known to exist in the wild. And obviously,
taken its name from the Wollomai National Park
30 years ago. So 30-year anniversary. You can see the little tag on there.
It's hard to believe, though. The story in itself is remarkable. So, a small stand of trees, we know about 100 trees, deep in a canyon.
Yeah.
A park ranger abseils into the canyon, looks at them, says, I haven't seen them, and I might grab some samples, takes them back, shows them to a paleobotanist who looks and says, hang on, I've seen that, pulls out some core samples taken from a drill rig that was drilling in Bass Strait, under Bass Strait, a kilometre of water, another kilometre down, and in that core they have all these leaf fossils sitting in there, and they look and they go, oh dear, this is something really special. And then those trees suddenly become the last trees on the planet. They knew that they existed all over the planet, and they suddenly go, this is the last stand of a tree that we thought died out at least 4 million years ago. And so they take those initial plants and start saying, well, how do we propagate them?
Yeah.
And then you guys come along and become the main propagator of this plant. So the trees that we showed in that footage is, it's a really remarkable story. Every year for the last 20 years, you've been growing crops and slowly getting better at growing and getting the best plants.
Yeah.
But bit by bit now, you're repopulating the earth with this amazing plant.
Yeah, exactly. And it's amazing to come to work and be able to say that you do that kind of stuff. Everybody here in the business is so proud of the fact that we are able to do that. We've been involved since the initial release to the public. So we were initially tasked with delivering the Woolamai, the first release of Woolamai around the country. Over time we became the people that actually grow that. So yeah, you've seen our greenhouses and what we're doing to exactly right, repopulate this species around the world.
Yeah. We're definitely getting a lot of comments at the moment. Maggie Bill said that she could say a lot of things about my toilet comment, but she'd be banned. Christine Rankin says, oh dear, Trevor, you're deteriorating rapidly. Must be the beard come off or something. There's a few people giving me a hard time about that bad joke, but there's a few asking some pretty good questions. Colleen Pollard, for example, has asked about the Woolamai pine and whether it'll actually perform in the humidity of Forster on the mid-north coast of New South Wales. Well, it's coming from central New South Wales, basically, so it should do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The Woolamai's been tested from -5 right up to 40 degrees and grows well in all those positions, in all those climates. Sorry, so it's super versatile from that perspective. I mean, this thing's been around, and survived through ice ages and firestorms and all sorts of things over the last 100 million years. So it's probably a fantastic survivor and will definitely do well in all parts of Australia for sure.
Well, I think probably the important thing here really is for us to all realise that we can actually play a role, just as you guys have, in reforesting the earth with this amazing survivor, bringing it back from the brink. And it's completely unique. It is absolutely beautiful. Colleen Pollard, can you grow it in a big tub? Absolutely. Kath Knight, can you grow it in the Adelaide Hills? Absolutely. I've seen it doing really well. Does it grow okay in Melbourne? I've seen it doing really well in Melbourne. The answer is yes. This is absolutely fantastic. Billy Lyons lives in Currajong, which is right on the edge of that area, and they'll grow absolutely fantastic there. So everybody's asking lots and lots of questions. This is a beautiful plant. We are celebrating the 30th anniversary of its rediscovery.
Correct.
And you guys are the first stop, one-stop shop. And that $99 deal that David gave us is unbelievable.
So that deal is all of those things that we talked about earlier. So you're going to get all of those things in the deal, and that's what 3 lucky listeners or viewers are going to find themselves with after today's show.
Well, hopefully those ones that were kind to me are rethinking just how kind they were, and they'll be in the running, because we're going to have a difficult job answering them all. We have to keep moving, mate, because we are almost out of time, but we've still got a heap of questions, and we're going to run a little bit longer and answer as many as we possibly can.
Perfect, mate. Enjoy, everyone, and good luck.
Nice to have you back with us, Rowan. Thanks, mate. All right, we'll see you next week. This is really going crazy at the moment. There are so many questions. Diane Phillip is in Redlands in Queensland. Have you any information on this plant? I do not, Diane. I love that plant. It looks like a couple of plants that I do know that come from that part of the world, but not with the red flower. Let me do some research on that. That's absolutely gorgeous. Let's keep rolling on. Sally Pittard, I need help with my peace lily. It's wilting. I've repotted it. Had it for a long time, it was standing up before I repotted it. So it's got a bit of shock, and you need to remove some of the leaves. You remove some of the roots, and that's what's going on. Repotting these things is a very good thing. Keep the moisture up to it for a while. A little bit of sea salt in your water will make the world of difference to that plant's recovery. Let's have a look. Are we frozen at the moment?
Are we?
Looks like the live is.
Oh, don't worry about the live. It's
oh.
not. It's not.
That's okay. All right. Well, as long as we're all together still, that's the important thing. Kerry Rapley, hello. Does anyone know how to get rid of that weed stinking Roger? I've got billions of them. Yes, it is a bit of a thing. I pulled them when they were about 2 meters tall and dead after poison. I burnt them, but they're returning. It looks like billions of tiny tomato plants. Yeah. So the best thing you can do now is not use, if you're going to use anything, use one of those fast knockdown sprays like Slasher, because it'll just burn them off really quickly. But to be honest, cultivate them into the soil is the best thing to do. I'm just looking at your question, but look, I honestly, it's the best way to go. And if it's coming up in grass, mow low, okay, and you'll take them out. But it's cultivating soil, a fast knockdown solution like Slasher, and Kerry, you'll be on top of it. Kerry Summers, can you tell me if magnolias are suitable for very large cast iron pots? And if so, do I still use potting mix? Pots are 800 high by 950, so they're large. Look, you can grow magnolias in there. And the question is, are we talking evergreen magnolias or deciduous magnolias? Both will grow in there. You want to go for one of the smaller growing varieties. So that's the really important thing here. And there are some that get quite large. So look for anything that's described as dwarf or compact. And you're probably better to go that way, Kerry. Yvonne Cook, hello, I'm interested in the screening used. Can you advise me where I can buy it? So look, actually it's a good question, Yvonne, because we get literally every week, there's 5 or 6 episodes of The Garden Gurus plays on Channel 9 or 9 Live or 9 Now. And we get a lot of questions come through. And sometimes these are old episodes. I've got to be completely honest. This sounds like the one that we did last week that Simon did. But the best source of all this information is thegardengurus.tv, our website. It's an amazing resource, and you can actually look at the story again. Plus, there's a fact sheet, and it details the retailers, it details the manufacturer. So if you've got a question you want to write to them direct, it gives you all of that information. And I think that that's probably the first stop I would have if I was you. Di Jones, you sent us some photos. Hi, Trevor and crew. After some advice for my rose bushes, please. I've got 2 pots doing well. Something's eating them. Not sure if it's snails or little green caterpillars. It's a caterpillar. And you can see it. It's getting in and it's skeletonizing the foliage. Now, there's different types of caterpillars, and it is unusual to see them on roses. And I'm just looking at some of those shots. So it's really quite bad. This is where there's a product from Yates called Success. You can use dipel as well, but it's really effective. The only thing is you probably only have eggs left on that plant, I would say, because that's caused by the grub going through. The grub would have already evolved into a moth or a butterfly and taken off. But if it's laid eggs there, then you'll get a second round. And so you want to probably look at knocking it back. So I'm just going to suggest to you that Success or dipel, best way to go. Michelle Blythe. Michelle's got an earwig problem and it's eating veggies. Now, earwigs typically would go for, so they're what they call a saprophyte. They'd much prefer to eat decaying organic matter than they would necessarily fresh green. But when they're in big populations, they'll eat green, no problems, particularly vegetables. And sometimes some of those fleshy plants like, say, frangipanis and so on, they can ring bark the tree. They can be controlled quite well by using that Yates Advance. It's a great all-round spray, and I'm going to steer you in that direction. Things like the old-fashioned carbaryl and so on, they will also treat it. You can also get what they call cricket and grasshopper. It's like a brambait, and you can use that, and it's got a carbaryl base in it as well. Those will bring them under control in a really big way in a very short period of time. Thing with them is they tend to be active at night, so spray just in the early evening if you want to get best effect. Jacinta Sossi, you sent us a photo. I've got a Japanese red maple that is not doing well. I'm not sure what to do to save her. And there is some foliage there, and I'm just wondering if it's a little early. Maybe you've jumped the gun here. It's a bit hard to tell with the photo. But I've got this. This is one of my favourite maples at home. They're absolutely fantastic. But the thing with this is that in the early season. I can see growth coming out and I can see it popping out all over. I think you're a little early. I just think it's been a lot later season this year, and plants like this have opened up a lot later than they normally would. So I'm not sure you've actually got a problem. I would give it a feed. I would give it maybe a little bit of sea soil just in the soil, just in case there are some root issues. And if there's any dead wood on there, get the secateurs out and just prune it away. That should help. Okay, Chrissy Marie just got home. Fantastic. You missed most of the show, but we've got you, which is great. Jenny Napier in Beachborough sent us some photographs. Our grass tree does not look good to me. It looks to me like you might be getting a little bit of a grub in there. The brown on one side definitely is I would say a bardy grub, and they get in and they drill a hole in there. Now these plants, it's a natural pest. These plants naturally adapt to them. But if the grass tree's been put in, now this is Xanthorrhoea presii. It's the West Australian grass tree, and it's a really interesting one from the point of view that it's very slow growing. For 1 foot of trunk, it takes 10 years. So a 10-foot tree, get this right, 10-foot tree trunk, which is not an uncommon thing to see in the natural bushland, is a few 100 years old at least. So you don't want to lose this, and you do want to control it. And the best way to do it is, I mentioned a Rich Grow product called Bug Killer. It's a granulated thing. Pop it around the base of the soil, just shake it around the outside. That will help control any grubs that are within the tree. Now, if the grub has got in and you're still seeing this deterioration, it may be that where it's bored in, you've now got a fungal problem, and you might need to use a systemic fungicide as well. And that's it's a little bit more challenging, but it's a product called Fosject, and that can help bring them back. And it's not too late at the moment. It's when the whole thing's turned brown that you're really in deep trouble. But at this point, it looks to me just like it's the borer, the grub that's doing the damage. So hopefully that helps. Good question. I know it's 10:10. It is 1:10 on the east coast of Australia. I will answer 4 more questions. Steve Skeels, I've got a large Codium variegatum, which is a croton, and it's growing and it needs to be pruned. Is it possible to strike and regrow new croton plants from larger cuttings? Not from larger cuttings. Your cuttings always want to be as big as that. That's maximum. But you can get hardwood, semi-hardwood, and tip cuttings from them. So you can end up with a lot of plants. So the answer is yes. You want a proper propagation mix. Ideally, one of those little propagation houses if you don't have any proper propagation system, and you've got to keep them moist. But take the cuttings, cut them flat, try and leave a couple of leaves on the hardwood cuttings and also on the softwood cuttings, and with the fresh new growth, cut all the foliage off up until the top 2 leaves. Pop them in, keep the moisture up to them. You can use rooting hormone, by the way, the gel, got to think of what they call that, Clonex gel, is exceptionally good for these plants. It helps seal off the wound, stops any fungus getting in that does anything that's bad, and it encourages and stimulates new root growth. So it's a really good way to go. Top question. Guess what? I reckon Steve's got definitely got a plant coming his way. Great question. Denise Burns, photos attached. Hello, Denise. Whoa, I've attached a photo of our shared front townhouse garden. There is to be a fence dividing properties. Would love some ideas on what we could do. Colours of maybe pavers, etc. Okay, it's a bit hard to tell, and really this is where you do. I think I can see maybe the division's going to go through the middle of this. I don't think I'd be recommending pavers personally. I think you've got enough hard stand there. It's going to get very hot during summer. So you just put some nice plants in there. Then I suppose it gets down to, do you like your neighbours? Do you want to have a little bit of, a little bit of interaction with them, or do you want to put a screen up that just gives you total privacy? And I can see that you've got some shrubs there. There's a whole range of things that you could plant in that kind of environment. My advice is you pick this photo up and you head down to your local garden centre and you say, look, we've got this, need to do some soil improvement, need to definitely select some plants, and need to make sure I've got some irrigation. You got those 3 things. They can give you some direct advice, and little mud map planting plan will also help. Going to your local garden centre should always be your first stop. I really recommend it. So great question. I reckon that could be number 2. And Donna Pierce has got some photos. Just wondering if you can help. Why are Kintia palms dying from the new frogs? Have a look at this. Now, this is a really interesting. Oh, okay, have we got those photos? Oh, yep, they're coming. This is a really interesting pic. So you can see this is very, very unhappy. And the question is this a pest? Is this an insect? Or is it a fungus? And the answer is it's neither. It's actually got to do with the nutrients in the soil. And there's a deficiency of some key nutrients that causes frizzy leaf on a number of different varieties of palms. And that's what's starting to go on here, Donna. This is a really unusual situation, but this is where you get trace elements and you enrich the soil with the trace elements dramatically. You really put a lot of trace element in around the outside. You water it in, get yourself a garden fork and fork it in as well so that it's getting right down. And what will happen is it'll take a period of time, but you've basically got to keep the nutrients up to this palm over the next 2 years. And that's basically every quarter giving it some more controlled release fertilizer that has a very good trace element base to it. And I always recommend Treforte because I know you can't go wrong with it. It's just so well balanced, but it also does a lot of good for the soil. But that will help that plant recover. There is no pesticide or insecticide that you can apply here that's going to make a difference. And Maggie Bill, I've got 2 large olive trees near the house. They're about 4 meters high, and I want them removed to the verge. Will they die if I move them? And the answer is no. But the trick is you've definitely got to get them into a situation where the soil they're going into is moist and that you're watering on a regular basis to maintain the moisture supply to this plant that would have come from the roots that are removed. Olives do transplant exceptionally well, so it's pretty hard to kill them. Take about 20% of the foliage off, retain as much of the root system as you can. You should do pretty well. Again, good questions. And always the answer to everything, I think, is making sure that you're using that seaweed extract. So sea salt is always so good in reducing transplant shock when you're transplanting something across. Wow, what a day. I think we kind of went over by 15 minutes or so, but that's it for this week's show. I hope you enjoyed it. The competition draw is our lucky winners are number 1, Diane Phillip, number 2, Donna Pierce, and number 3, Steve Skeels. Congratulations. Please send your details through, message our wonderful producer, Holly, and you can always email Holly as well. So it's holly@guruproductions.tv, guruproductions.tv, and or you can just message us via Facebook and she will pick that up. And we will organise that amazing prize thanks to our friends at Garden Express. Now remember, anything you want from Garden Express, you can buy 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They are your one-stop garden shop and they deliver direct to your door. And they had that amazing deal today, $99 for that incredible price. It's normally $150 or more. And we have 3 lucky winners. I'm so pleased for you. You should be so thrilled. All right. I'm going to ask you to do this one more time. Please hit the like button for us. Sharing this with your friends is always the best thing ever, and it really helps us. We're trying to build our community, and every week, when we take a look back, we're getting somewhere between 12 and 15,000 people watch this show. It's absolutely brilliant when you are sharing this. We'd love to build that number to be even bigger. Holly's telling me that I've really got to take a deep breath and get off, but what I'm going to tell you is we are back with the Garden Gurus this weekend on Channel 9. 4:30 p.m. It is episode 10. We've only got 3 more to go, so don't miss out. The episode's getting better and better as the series comes to an end. You'll see some great stories. I know you'll love it. Remember, if you've got questions, send us photographs. Tell us where you're from. Send them through to holly@guruproductions.tv. That's really important. There will be another live show next week right here. And if you want more information, just remember, you can jump onto our website. It's a great resource, a fantastic, honestly, it's kind of like a gardening library, but it connects you with all the different people you might need to talk to, tells you where you can get things from. It really is absolutely fantastic. And of course, the live gets posted to our Facebook page and it gives you a chance to watch back if you have missed something. Wow, there's a lot going on. Don't forget, the Garden Gurus is on Channel 9 this weekend. I'm Trevor Cochran. A big thanks to Holly and Nika for joining us. What a great program. Thank you so much, and have a great weekend. I really loved spending some time with you. Take care.